Good morning, everybody. Good morning, everybody. So, I said it yesterday, Nigerians only answer you when you greet them the second time. It never fails. Welcome to this session. We're just like 5 minutes over the time, but it's my pleasure to welcome you to the first plenary session for today. And today, we're going to have a very distinguished and eminent personality in Nigeria who would give us a guest lecture. However, this session will also be moderated by very eminent people. These are people I've worked with over the years. These are people that are very passionate about women and children. If you look at the program, unfortunately, Professor Otubu could not come, but we also have someone who we all know very well, who will take his place. So without much ado, let me welcome the chair and the co-chair for this guest lecture session, Mr. Mike Edo. He works as the country director, JSCPSM, and Chief Mrs. Mujima Konjola, MFR, who has been in the health communications sector for so long. Please come to the high table.
Sound check.
Okay, so our handover, as you can see, we also practice gender balance when it comes to family planning, because without that, you cannot reproduce. So our handover. Okay, I'll hand over to the moderators, Mr. Mike Edgo and Mrs. Mujima Konjola. Thank you.
Good morning. In the spirit of gender, I'll hand over to Moji to start.
Well, in the spirit of the moment, where we're trying and struggling to engender equity, I welcome all of us here. I recognize our fathers. I recognize the grandfather of FP in Nigeria. And I think he deserves a large round of applause. Your Royal Highnesses, my father from Kwara, my father in Sokoto, I recognize you. Thank you for your time. I recognize all the he for she's that are here. I think we should recognize them. Please, can you be upstanding if you are here with us as women? Yes, all the men. Okay. Okay, he for she. Oh, okay, thank you. Thank you very much. I think it's important. Oh, thank you, Your Royal Highness. Thank you, Bagadojin. Yes. All the she for he's. Please, can you just stand up and, yes, since I'm one. I think that is really the spirit. Yeah. All the development partners here present, my colleagues from the media, very distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I'm happy sitting with him, but I'm not sure if we have enough handkerchiefs. Are you going to cry today?
I'm covered.
He's covered. Yes. Today we're speaking to a very important topic as we try, for us women around the world, while we try to orange the world. This is the last day of the 16-day activism to combat, to contain, to eliminate, to eradicate gender-based violence. And so in, uh, in an abnormal year where a new normal has occurred, I'd like to welcome all of us here. The lecture is titled Family Planning, COVID-19 Pandemic and the Progress Towards Achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. Very germane, very important. Speaking to us on this is from, some people say that there are two universities in Nigeria. It is still contestable, but I know that the father of FP will nod to this. And so from the oldest university, this side of the country, or this side of the continent. Proudly, I'd like to invite from the University of Ibadan, from the Department of Economics, Professor Lanre Olanio, who today is our guest lecturer on this topic. Is he joining us virtually? Okay. Are you there, sir?
Yes, I am.
Thank you very much.
Yes, I need to share my screen, but the host has disabled me from sharing. Maybe if they allow, I can share the screen. So that I can make the presentation and show my PowerPoint. Okay, thank you very much. It's been allowed. I hope everybody can see my screen now. Good morning, everybody. And let me start by acknowledging our fathers, our mothers that are in the Situation Room, our senior colleagues, and the chair and the co-chair of this session. It's a pleasure to be invited to be able to share my own thoughts on the issue on ground. I acknowledge the tenacity of Dr. Oji and his team for making sure that I made this presentation, even after I had intended to come personally, but due to some unforeseen contingencies, I'm not able to make it. But thank God that I'm able to make this presentation, even if it is virtually. It is a pleasure to be here, to be able to share my thoughts. I have a 5-item outline. I'll make a brief introduction, followed by the demography of Nigeria, family planning during emergencies, and then how we can make family planning work for the SDGs. And then I conclude with some thoughts, some personal thoughts. Of course, we actually started from China, and by February 27, it brought with it a lot of uncertainty and a lot of shocks. It was not a deep earth in nature, but it affected every facet of life, whether it's economic, sociological context. And the illness and its effects have been unprecedented, at least as far as I know, in this century. Suddenly, everybody has become reminded of how global health security can be very important, and that working in silos in present world may be difficult to achieve. It has also reminded us about the weaknesses in the various health systems that we have. Social protection to protect people, most economists ran into trouble, coupled with the developed world, and even in Nigeria, we remember that just a few weeks ago, the GDP had recession, and it has also told us of how interconnected we are. Since the first time when the epidemic, when it was reported in Nigeria, we've seen a rise, a steady rise from week 1 when we have the first case to week 23 when we had the highest number of cases, 22,567, and it has started declining ever since. One caveat with the decline is also that it is not just the confirmed cases are declining, but the number of people that are tested are also declining. So we may not say that it is really declining, but for the fact that the number of people that are tested are reducing, then we also have this reduction in number. It is interesting to know that the health sector is the most affected, given that it is an illness. And unfortunately, this has prompted response and initiated in different areas of health. And there are arguments on whether reproductive health and family planning had received the appropriate response during this pandemic. Incidentally, as we have seen and from earlier presentations, reproductive health is a fundamental right, and only individual adults should have the power to decide whether, when, and how often to consume. But every right has come with a responsibility. There are also responsibilities attached to this, and that responsibility is one of the things that family planning has tried. Then people must also come with their responsibility, those children. And that's because family planning ensures the success of every society. It ensures a balanced fertility and demographic transition. Demographic transition, which is a situation where population of countries move from one that is undeveloped to one that is developed, is beneficial to everybody because it leads economy from underdevelopment to development. This movement from underdevelopment to development will only happen if we are, and it leads to better health and survival of mother. It leads to a better educated population. And with adequate and effective family planning, individuals can take responsibility for the number of children they desire. And we often find out that when people take responsibility for the number of children that they desire, they always have less number of children, making birth rates to fall. There is another paradigm in the literature now that talks about demographic dividend, a situation where birth rates fall and we have a substantial number of people within the youth age. And when you have this large number of people within youth and working age, many people are able to work and then they are able to generate surplus and then have what we call this demographic dividend. I'll come to that later. However, when the pandemic happened and when it came to Nigeria, there are many responses. Most countries set up pandemic task forces. Nigeria had a national COVID presidential task force, lockdowns in cities. Many cities in the country were also locked down. Schools were closed, markets were closed, travels were banned, and so many other things. The importance is that we already have a problem in our hand, which is the pandemic. And in addition to the pandemic, we also have these responses. And both the pandemic and the responses come with attendant risk and uncertainty. For both family planning and reproductive health. Let's try and look at the demography of Nigeria. As 63% of Nigerians are working to support every other person. They support themselves, their consumption, and support every other person. That's a far cry, and that means that 34 people out of 100 are supporting 100 people. It's different from the case of Europe, for example, where only 26% are under 25 years old. But the proportion of people that are working are 64%. And those 64% are working to support themselves, and those that are not working. This is the reason for family planning. If we don't have family planning and we continue to have more than 63% of our population that are dependent, then it becomes really tough. And it's different from Europe, for example, where more than 2/3 are the ones that are working to support the others. That's the big story about the fertility of Nigeria. And you see, Nigeria has grown tremendously in terms of population. From 1950, when we had 37.8 million people, we already had 206 million by year 2020, the current year that we have, according to the UN population prospects figure that I have put here. And we expect about 200 million people to be added by 2050. 200 million people that will need health, 200 million people that will need education, 200 million people that will need housing, 200 million people that will need resources that we all share. The question is, are we all able to provide resources for these people? That's the issue. But let's focus on the issue on ground, which is the pandemic. Was Nigeria prepared for this pandemic? The answer is yes and no. Because as far back as 2013, Nigeria has a national pandemic influenza preparedness and response plan to prepare for influenza type pandemic like this. And we know that COVID is an influenza type pandemic. It was prepared. One thing that you will note from that report was that neither reproductive health nor family planning was mentioned in that report, which means that even when we plan for health and we plan for these things, very few people think of family planning and reproductive health as an issue, as a big issue that should be considered. In addition, the Global Health Security Index, we try to assess the capabilities of countries to cope with health issues, also scored Nigeria 37.8 out of 100, and we were ranked 96. We showed that the preparedness was a little bit below half. Of course, we know that countries that are more prepared than us also had their challenges with the resources that we are having from European countries, North and South American countries. But the issue is that preparedness, once one is prepared, it assists in ability to better manage the situation. And that's why we need to know how is family planning prepared? How was family planning prepared before we have this? Of course, one of the biggest issues is contraceptive use. And we know that the full benefits of using contraception, it assists people to realize their full potential for both man and woman. The woman is able to fulfill her role as wife, mother, wage earner, if possible. And the man is also able to fulfill his own role as husband, father, caregiver, and the head of the family. And that's when this is done in a better, it also improves the socioeconomic condition of not just the parents, but also the children. In addition, one of the things that the African Union found was that Africa has the highest proportion of population growth rates. And there is the possibility of making sure that we put these people to work. So family planning and co-consultation will assist Africa in making progress toward achieving the African Union Agenda 2063, as well as the Sustainable Development Goal. Let's look at the demand for family planning. Approximately, we're actually active. I do not want a child in the next 2 years. However, unmet need is equally very high. Unmet need for modern transportation is even more higher among unmarried, sexually active adolescents. So these are some of the situations that we have in Nigeria. And boom, COVID-19 entered into the stage. And the first response that many countries did was to restrict mobility, making it difficult for young people to access high quality, respective, and confidential care. It's not just about family planning services or healthcare, but it's a survey that was done in the proportion of individuals that are unable to access healthcare during the lockdown. And we find out that more than 20% of women of childbearing age could not access any type of healthcare service because of the lockdown. And this is substantial because if they cannot access healthcare service, which is freely available in some places and in some places in this country, accessing family planning services is actually even more discreet. Then we could expect that there are higher negative effects on access to sexual and reproductive health services, which should be essential and life-saving. And that means that the possibility of increased unmet need for modern contraceptives, unintended pregnancies, increased unsafe. This gives a lot of implication for the health system issues that we have in this country. It gives a lot of implication for the financing issues. It gives a lot of implication for economic and general planning issues, as well as global goals that the government has signed into. Of course, Nigeria had a weak health system before this system, and the COVID-19 pandemic and its response brought that into show. We had to move health personnel from their daily duty, and some of them were moved into COVID-19 response team. We still recall that there are also labor issues, and the doctors had to go to court on whether how do we remunerate them and things like that, and financing issues. We know that Nigeria has not been allocating the required amount that they should from the budget. For example, the budget allocation to health always hovers around 5%, not minding the Abuja Accord that has suggested 15%, but that's what we have. And coupled with the fact that when we talk about the health system in general, and we want to respond to it, the Nigerian government set up what they call the Response Task Team. And that team, headed by the Vice President, came up with what they call the Economic Sustainability Plan of Government. Another issue, just like the Preparedness Plan, the Economic Sustainability Plan of Government sets many things about health, but there was not a time, not even a sentence, said about either reproductive health or family planning. I mean, these are some of the issues that we can discuss on when do we try to make people believe that these things are also part of economy, part of the governance. Let me start in identifying the effects by looking at the status of Nigeria. I'm going to talk like an economist, and I will try as much as possible to make sure that I am understandable. I've put up this graph, and this graph shows the labor income, the income that people earn by age. The age is the horizontal axis, and we find out that until about age 15, 16, people do not earn income in Nigeria, but that income continues to increase as they grow old. And it reached an initial peak at about age 48, and then another peak at about age 56. And the income of an average Nigerian comes down. That is the structure.
Sorry, can you try and round up?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Because we have to finish by.
Okay, I didn't know. Okay, so let me move forward to where the effects could really show. I thought I had 30 minutes. That's why I was looking at that one. Anyway, to see the effects, one of the things that we did at Ibadan was to construct what we call a demographic dividend monitoring index for the country. And the components, before we had about 5 components along with the pillars of the demographic dividend, which are 5 pillars. And then there is a health pillar. So the health pillar showed us that the index was 32.9 out of 100 before COVID, but after COVID, that has been reduced to about 30, as you can see on the graph on the right-hand side. But we look at what happens specifically to reproductive health. Reproductive health index was 39.5, and that was before COVID. After COVID, it's also reduced substantially. So, but we can also look at the components of the reproductive health itself, and the components, the component. Okay, sorry, I'm coming. The reproductive health was 39.5, and during COVID, it has reduced to 27.9 because many of the components, including fertility rate, adolescent fertility rate, skip birth attendance, and proportion of those demanding, virtually all of them fell during the period of COVID-19. So generally, the demographic dividend monitoring index reduced from 37.9 to 36.0 as a result of the effect that COVID-19 has had on the demographic dividend. But let me try to conclude by saying that there can be no sustainability without efficient and effective family planning. The demand for family planning will never cease as long as life continues to exist on Earth. Human wants to satisfy their physiological desires, need, and procreation. And that's the way it is on the basis of family planning as a sustainability issue that Nigeria assigned to the Sustainable Development Goals. And we know that F is at the core of that goal, and there are at least two main targets that are specifically for reproductive health. So how do we make Nigeria has not performed very well in the progress towards achieving the SDGs. It was 48%, and that's for all African countries. So let me move to how do we make family planning work for the SDGs? I've identified 5 main areas where family planning can work for the SDGs through digital revolution, implementation arrangements, financing strategies, communications and outreach, as well as partnership. And we know that, thank God, that family planning has experience in this digital economy in the way it has been dealing with the provision of family planning services. This is one of the things that SDGs can also learn from. The second thing is that government must take the commanding heights in this implementation through having action plan, as well as making sure that the implementation plan involves every stakeholder. There must be financing. It needs to strengthen the financing mechanism for family planning and reproductive health, because that's the elephant in the room. The magnitude of financing that we will need, will be really enormous. Communication and outreach. The COVID-19 has given us that we can piggyback on the experience of family planning services, because that's what was used. The effectiveness of the way we have been able to communicate the family planning services and reproductive health in Nigeria is one of the things that we can learn of. And partnership is key. Every stakeholder has to be involved. All hands must be on the deck, and we can bring all stakeholders together in a way that address family planning and COVID-19 issues. So I conclude by saying COVID-19 pandemic emergencies have affected family planning negatively in the last 10 months. The effect is escalated due to the structure of the pace and patterns of the country's population and preparedness of the health system. The effects of the emergency on family planning have important implications for the country's progress in harnessing the demographic dividend, as well as attaining the sustainable development goal. It is important to know that until we try to understand, and everybody believes that family planning involves everything, including the general planning of the country, we may be leaving some people behind. And according to the Sustainable Development Goals, we should not leave anybody behind. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Give him a round of applause. Prof, thank you very much for that great presentation.
Sir.
I'm not going to repeat what you said, but I just say 2 things that is taken away from me. Is FP ensures the development of society from underdeveloped to developed, and then no sustainable development without family planning. It's a key message that came out, and then you give us the 5 prerequisites for what we need to do to ensure we achieve sustainable development goal. We have to do with government financing, commodities, outreach, partnership, etc. So on that note, I think I'll just throw it to the floor and see if we have questions. Anybody? While Prof is still on the line. Yeah, Margaret. Oh, Somebody need to give her the microphone.
Good morning, everyone. And I request to stand on the existing protocol. My name is Margaret Edison, and I work for National Population Commission. Prof, I want to thank you for that excellent presentation. But the question I will ask, coming out from the messages that played out in your presentation, is on the issue of population. You said the population, the size of our population, as well as the preparedness of the medical system of Nigeria, deepened the exposure to emergency during the COVID, when the COVID came in. But the question I have for you, Prof, this morning, was there any particular, looking at the population structure, which of the population group really caused the problem that deepened the emergency situation in Nigeria during the COVID-19? Because that will advise government on policy choices and implementation strategy. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, can I provide an answer? I should take all questions first.
No, take that question. We're going to collect questions and then send them online to you. Answer that question, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. It's a pleasure. In terms of age structure of the Nigerian population, I will go two ways in answering that question. The first one is to look at the data by the NCDC on those that were actually affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. And those that were really affected by the COVID pandemic were those within the working age, those between ages 25 to age 54. In fact, 42% of those that were that had problems were between ages 35 and 54. So that's the NCDC information. How does that translate into the economy? It translated into the economy because these are also the people that are working. And many of them, as a result of that, lost their livelihood during the COVID-19 pandemic situation. So this does not only affect them, it also affects those that are dependent on them. Let me say that the population figure and the structure of the population, just like I've said, shows that we have very few people within the working age. The bigger problem from the analysis of the National Bureau of Statistics, their quarter 3 results and the quarter 2 results on unemployment indicates that from additional analysis that we have made at Ibadan, that 44 million Nigerians are looking for jobs. The implication in that is that government cannot provide jobs for everybody. I don't see government providing 44 million jobs. So it then means we need to start looking for how we need to provide 44 million jobs. That's one. Next year, additional 2.5 million Nigerians will enter the working age. Those within the working age that are looking for work are 44 million. Next year, additional 2.5 million will join them. So those are the issues that we need to look at so that we focus on unemployment and how we need to solve the employment and employability issues that we have in this country. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Prof. If you still have questions, please put them on the yellow sticker and we'll pass them to Prof online, so it will be answered. I'd like to use this opportunity. Prof, you have 4 questions that will be coming to you that you need to provide answers to, and we will pass it on to the
Okay.
Yeah, but I'd like to thank you very much for taking time out to be with us today, and also the participants. I know we would like to discuss much more about this topic, but we can do those discussions in our breakout sessions and while having tea. And also, you can send your questions to the organizers or your concerns or your recommendations, and that will be the way to move forward. Thank you for having me here. God bless you. Let me hand over to.
Thank you very much. It has been a very interesting session, an imperative for development as enunciated by Prof. Prof, you will get more questions coming your way. But then if we look at the figure of 44 million unemployed and 2.5 million to join that queue, then we need to take family planning very, very seriously. Thank you for allowing us to chair this session. I'm sure other sessions continue. Have a good afternoon, morning.
A round of applause for these, our seasoned, eminent personnel.